tired. I didn't realize how cheap this costume looked until I wore it, but it actually looks quite good on video. Hello everyone, it's Seji, and today I will be talking about Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Now, I don't know if you can remember, but a long time ago I bought this huge stack of Puffin classics and I said something silly like, I'll be making 2 videos reviewing them after I've read them. Back then I was still blissfully ignorant about how long it actually takes to read a book and write a decent review, so here we are. Either way, let's start off with the history. The book Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is the first of the 2 Alice in Wonderland books, written by the English author and mathematician Charles Dodgson, the second one being Through the Looking Glass. Through the Looking Glass. The story is about a young girl called Alice who falls into a rabbit hole after having followed a white talking rabbit. Throughout the course of the book, Alice meets a huge cast of peculiar characters, from the Mad Hatter to the Queen of Hearts. The story first came to life when Charles took the 3 daughters of the Vice Chancellor of Oxford University on a boat trip. Charles at the time was a lecturer there. One of the daughters was called Alice, and on that trip Charles told the story of a young girl called Alice who was looking for an adventure. The girls loved it and Alice asked Charles to write it down for her. He began working on it the following day, and 3 years later, in 1865, it was first published as the story we now know. The book is of significant literary value as it has, over its 150 years of existence, heavily influenced different works of art. Having read this book for the first time, I was amazed by the freedom and cleverness of Dodgson's writing, which I've never seen before. I can definitely see why children like this story. It has this type of childlike innocence to them, in the sense that Alice sees these strange and outlandish things and just easily accepts them. It's the same way in which a child might believe you that you've flown back from work on a unicorn. Which, for the record, is possible because unicorns do exist. At the same time, I also think it's still very amusing for adults to read. The story is just very interesting and the writing is superb. I actually reread the first 35 pages and it felt like a completely different story. There's always something new to discover. Like, for instance, Charles himself actually appears in the story as the dodo. When speaking, Charles stuttered, so sometimes he would pronounce his last name as Dodgson, as in dodo. Either way, I kind of regret not reading this as a child because there were just so many things that resonated with me in the story, so I felt that it would have had a major influence on me. Like I said previously, this book was written 150 years ago during the Victorian era, so the story contains a lot of parodies of Victorian popular culture. My favourite parody was that of the nursery rhyme called Against Idleness and Mischief. Whereas the original praises virtue, Charles's does the exact opposite. The original goes as follows. How doth the little busy bee improve every shining hour and gather honey all the day from every opening flower. How skillfully she builds her cell, how neat she spreads the wax, and labours hard to store it well with the sweet food she makes. In works of labour or of skill I would be busy too, for Satan finds mischief still for idle hands to do. In books or work, or healthful play, let my first year be past, that I may give for every day some good account at last. Carroll's version is, how doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale. How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly he spreads his claws, and welcome little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. There's also a lot of math in this book, which I think is very cool. In the second chapter, Pool of Tears, Alice tries to see if she can still perform multiplication, and this is actually one of my favourite passages. Let me see. Oh dear, how puzzling it all is! I'll try if I know all the things I used to know. Let me see. 4 times 5 is 12, and 4 times 6 is 13, and 4 times 7 is... Oh dear, I shall never get to 20 at that rate. Which is super funny, also because I just realized that she starts off with 4 times 5, which is 20, and at the end she's all like, oh, I'll never get to 20 at that rate, when she already started with that. But you know, first I thought, damn, Alice is just stupid. I even wrote, Alice is like the kid who thinks she knows stuff, but she's entirely delusional. But now here's the math stuff. Actually, what Alice was doing was relaying a sequence of multiplication in which every term had a different base notation, moving up 3 bases each term. Now, if you would like to have a clear explanation of this, I have put a timestamp here, so you can go to the part of the video in which I go through the maths. There are also a lot of puns, and I'd like to share 2 of them with you. At the beginning of the story, Alice meets a mouse who tells her a tale. Now, of course, this mouse also has a physical tale, so Alice starts thinking of that, and this is basically what happens. You have the tail of the mouse in the shape of a tail, which I think is hilarious. Towards the end of the story, Alice meets a creature called the Mock Turtle, who tells her a story of his time in school when he was still in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise. Why did you call him Tortoise if he wasn't one? Alice asked. We called him Tortoise because he taught us, said the Mock Turtle angrily. I don't think that was really funny. So yes, I thought that was a fun read, and the most important thing that I took away was that we shouldn't take life too seriously. Either way, thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Well, hello there. Thank you very much for sticking around for the mathematics part. I really do appreciate it. Okay, so let's start. And I might go a bit slow because I haven't really thought this out. Okay. So, what Alice says is 4 times 5 is 12, 4 times 6 is 13, and 4 times 7 is 14. Okay, so basically what I said was that she was correct, but she was using different base notations. For this one, she was using 18. For this one, she was using 21. And for this one, she was using 24. And as you can see here, it goes up by 3. Okay, so I will explain a bit what base notation means. Basically, base notation is the way you represent numbers. For instance, computers use the second base. So that would be their zeros and ones. And we actually use the decimal base. So how that basically works is you would have 10 to the power 4, to the power 3, to the power 2, to the power 1, and to the power 0. So 10 to the power 0 is 1, to the power of 1 is 10, this is 100, this is 1,000, and this is 10,000. So basically, if we would like to represent, for instance, the number 42, each number has its own position. The 2 is in the first, and the 4 is in the second. So this is the first, oh, that's Dutch. This is the first position, this is the second, third, fourth, and fifth. So we put them in the correct position. Here we have 2, and here we have 4. So basically this is 4, 2. So the way we calculate it basically is 10. So you take the 10 of here times 4
plus 1 times 2. So what you get then is 40 plus 2 is 42. So that's basically the decimal notation. Excuse me. So let's try and do that with what Alice gave us. So it was 4 times 5, right? Is 12. Now, okay, we were going to do this in base 18. Let's check out our base, our regular base. 4 times 5 is 20. So how would we represent this in base 18? We would have to write down the same way as we did for base 10, basically. This. So we have here 1, 18, and I don't know this by heart, but this is not necessary for the number because it's so small. So we have 20. So with these numbers, we want to get 20. Well, if we take for the second position a 1, we get 18 times 1. And then for the first position, we have 2. So you would get 1 times 2. So that eventually becomes 18 plus 2 is 20. And here we have our base 18 notation for the number 20. Here. So it is 12, as Alice said. Okay, so then it's the same for the other ones, and I'll do those quickly. So you have 4 times 6, she said, was a 13. So that was base 21. So you have 21 to the power 2, 21 to the power 1, 21 to the power 0. Okay, so this is 1, this is 21. And I don't know what that is. So 4 times 6 in our system is 24. So we would get that by putting in the second position 1. So we'd get 21 times 1. And then in the first position we would put 4, not 4, we would put 3, sorry. So 1 times 3. So we would get 21 plus 3 is 24. And here we have our base 21 notation of 24. Okay, so the last one, 4 times 7 is, it was 14, right? Yeah, 14. And then our base was 24. Yeah, it was 24. Okay, so 24 to the power 2, to the power 1, and to the power 0. Okay, so 4 times 7 in our notation is 28. So here we have some number, we have 24, and we have 1. So we could get that by putting here a 1. So we'd get 24 times 1 plus, here we could add a 4, and that would become 1 times 4 is 24 plus 4 is 28. So here again we have 14 in base 24. So basically, if you'd look at this at first, you'd say, okay, this doesn't make any sense, this is wrong. But Alice's thinking is just different. It is correct, but it's just a different way of counting. So yeah, that was it. I thought this was very interesting. I hope you thought so as well. So yeah, thank you very much again, and I'll see you in the next video.